An Empire of Ice and Fire by Longclaw 1-6, Chapter 95, Cold Hands. Emperor Jon Targaryen trembled, not under the oppressive cold of the high winter that draped over the known world, his blood hot with dragonfire, steeled with the strength of the unfrozen. No, the last tendrils of his uncle Aemon's life force, the flickering orange-red flames engulfing Longclaw, the utter numbness of death still clinging to him. Even for the prince that was promised, it weighed on him, shackled him, left him a shell of what he was, mind frantic to find meaning again, to find a ledge with which to hang on to haul himself back to life, to prove himself alive. And the Emperor's faithful direwolf provided such proof. Barking, Ghost darted forward, wet tongue relentlessly attacking Jon's warming face with broad licks. A massive direwolf, the size of a small horse, with a pelt of pure white fur and eyes that glowed a deathly red, acting exactly like a lonely puppy whose master had just arrived home. Which was technically the case for him in a matter of speaking. Flames extinguishing on Longclaw rippling pattern. Jon dropped the blade as he raised his hands to fend off Ghost's attack. "Ghost, please, blah!" The words were halting, both from the slobber coating his face and with trying to get his wits about him once more. Shock still filling everyone, the scene before them drew a chuckle out of Howland, which soon morphed into a full belly laugh. Arya joined next, joined by Jojen, and soon all but the still utterly stunned Leaf were practically keeling over with laughter, watching their emperor, a man who had come back again from the dead, only to literally pull a flaming sword from his body, only for the great direwolf he kept as a companion to lick his face as would a common puppy. It was just comical to the extreme. A loud hoot finally sent Ghost away, allowing Jon to breathe, until the superheated breath of his green dragon hit him in the face. Rhaegal darted his head forward, hot tongue swiping up and down Jon's face and torso. Rrrg! The only thing worse than Ghost's loving attack was Rhaegal's. Arya and the men only laughed harder, many actually falling over. All the stress and grief of the last few days pouring out as they jeered, cheered and mocked their ruler and his affectionate animal companions. Vicious, deadly animal companions. Eventually Rhaegal's point had been communicated. Giving his father and rider one last happy nuzzle, the dragon pulled back, watching everything with bright amber eyes. Laughter dying down, Howland grabbed the white shroud from the base of the dais and handed it to Jon. "Your Majesty, to clean you off." He grinned widely. Taking it, Jon wiped off the slobber. "Thank you." He sucked in a deep breath, letting the freezing air reinvigorate his lungs with a delightful burn. Was it the wolf's blood in him? He and Dany felt the same when taking scalding baths. Still wasn't enough for his throat. Water." "Here, Your Majesty," Sorbog stated. A water skin pushed towards him, with fresh snowmelt. Jon took a deep swig, letting the liquid soothe his throat. Gods, it felt wonderful. As soon as he handed the water skin back, did his sister slam into him, arms tight round his waist. "You stupid fucking idiot!" Happy tears falling from her eyes. "Don't ever give me a fucking scare like that again, or it's going to be me who stabs you in the heart!" Feeling his strength returning, Jon grinned against his little sister's hair. "Twice was enough for me, Arya." He held her, returning her hug. "Did I ever mention you look exactly like my mother?" Arya pulled back, smiling through her tears. "A lot of people say that. I'm pretty sure it's a compliment." Allowing himself one last smile to his sister, the threats facing them returning to his mind with the force of Gendry's warhammer. The reality he had to face. "How long since the battle?" 4 days, Your Majesty," Howland answered, Jon responding with a look of horror. "The vast majority of the armies managed to escape. Your plan worked like a charm." "How many did we lose?" The Emperor cut him off. Arya rolled her eyes. Jon was so predictable. Rather would dwell in the bad news than accept the good. Howland rubbed the back of his neck. "I'm not sure, Your Majesty. Probably about 10,000 or so." Jon winced. Took it down at least 7 of that number. John picked up Longclaw, holding it in his hand as he pushed off the dais on unsteady legs. But they have Daenerys. Anger forming, face shaking with rage, Rhaegal and Ghost sensed the near outworldly inferno coursing through him. Ghost snarled, Rhaegal shrieked, and Longclaw erupted into flame once again, covering the Emperor in a terrifying red glow, the hue of dragonfire, of the doom of Valyria, of the dawn itself. Get ready, men! We move at daybreak. Before he could move forward towards the keep of Last Hearth, he stumbled. The fire of Valyria and ice of the north may have been binded to his flesh, blood and soul, but without food and proper rest, it left him nearly falling upon the ground. 2 Crannog men managed to grab his arms. Rhaegal hooted in alarm, but relaxed as he saw his furry brother darting forward, propping up their father from the back. Brother, stop! Arya thumped him on the shoulder, knowing that part of him was hurting. You were dead for 4 days, stupid. You're in no position to ride. Lady Baratheon is right, Your Majesty. Jojen Reed, the once sickly, frail young boy, was now a strapping young man thanks to Bran using his warlock magic to free him from his sickness. He helped ease the Emperor towards the keep. The army of the dead is nowhere near Winterfell right now. You can take 1 day to rest. You don't have a choice, idiot. Arya smacked him upside the head for good measure. The only one who could do that to the Targaryen Emperor. Mouth open, then closing, then opening again. Only to close once more, Jon sighed, letting his eyes soften. All right. Remaining in the courtyard, all others, including Ghost, following Jon into the keep, Arya sat upon the now empty dais, legs giving out with all the tension. Gods! A loud grunt drew her attention to Rhaegal, the great dragon cocking his head. I know, boy. I can't believe it. Rhaegal grunted once more, before he lurched off the courtyard, wing beats almost knocking Arya off the dais as he took off. A hand ghosted over the pendant still tied to her neck, then to cat's paw sheathed on her hip. Never again. The last of the faceless men swore an oath before death. Never again will they hurt my family. Line break. The lone rider passed through the camp with ease. Atop his horse, black cloak pulled around his body, the sentries on the outskirts didn't stop him, or attempt to even inquire his identity. In any army, that should have been punished with a public flogging, but the opponents weren't any foreign army, or even bandits. When the threat came from an army of dead men, an obviously alive rider upon a horse didn't seem like a threat by comparison. Though he wasn't technically alive, but such a fact wasn't relevant at the moment. Defences on the outskirts were extensive, though. Staves, trenches, earthworks of snow and bales of dirt. Benjen smelt the spicy odour of pitch and wildfire. Liberal use of it. Vast killing fields of metal and dragonglass shards that would rip through any attacking forces to pieces dumb enough to attack. Smart girls, he thought, imagining the women of House Stark being in charge of this. He passed through the clusters of tents and dugouts, ramshackle lean-tos filled with the manically artificially merry soldiers joining in what could be their last night upon this earth. Those of the Reach, the North, New Valyria, the Westerlands, all celebrating in the name of some pretextual to their desire to forget all that ailed them. No one paid any mind as to their enjoyed they night. Barrels of ale and casks of sour Dornish wine cracked open for liberal consumption. Not knowing why, the rider didn't begrudge them for seeking revelry as impending death descended upon them. "Fog the Night King!" yelled a rather drunken bannerman. By the tree on his breastplate, he was from House Blackwood in the Riverlands. "Fog him right in the ass!" Cheers rung out at the profane battle cry, even among the rider, who smiled under his cloak. "Wait till he tastes my dragonglass!" hooted another bannerman, by his armour style being from House Selmy in the Stormlands. "Perhaps I'll fog him with it!" Resting the obsidian-coated sword, he placed it over his crotch in a rather exaggerated description of his endowment, miming a frantic fornication to the jeers and drunken bragging of the other bannermen. The rider chuckled, having seen far worse at Castle Black. Atop the battlements of Winterfell and in front of the gates, the sentries were much more observant.
Halt! Here goes
one said. His words were slurred slightly, but not to the point of being unfit for duty.
Us northerners can hold their ale. Benjen Stark, the cloaked rider replied. I am here to see my nephew, the Lord of Winterfell.
He wished to ask for the Emperor, but he knew.
Gods, Benjen knew.
Blinking, unsure of himself, the guard looked to his companion.
How do you know it's him?
The other shrugged.
Get Rick. He's been around since fucking forever.
The other banner man nodded drunkenly and darted off into the crowd of more connected revellers within the courtyard. Benjen waited for several minutes before an older man appeared, the guard in tow. Smiling despite himself, he took off his hood. The older man's eyes widened.
Lord Stark! He immediately bowed. We heard you died north of the wall.
One of the last bits of news that arrived before the Ironborn took over the castle.
Most people did. Now, may I see my nephew?
He nodded profusely.
Of course, Lord Stark. Right this way.
If the festivities of the quote-unquote highborns in the courtyard were less crude than those of the men, Benjen didn't see it. Ale flowed freely. Men peeled off into corners to void their stomachs, or with a woman, or two or three in the case of one knight, 2 Dothraki and 1 free folk. At least half a dozen small fisticuff fights and melees with training swords were breaking out, cheering crowds egging them on. The guard looked at Benjen and shrugged sheepishly.
They tend to get carried away, my lord. What's the special occasion?
He replied with a smirk.
The Lady Hand Sansa took her vows before the godswood this evening, to her new husband, Sir Podrick Payne. Sansa to a Westerlander?
Benjen chuckled, enjoying how topsy-turvy everything was becoming.
It heartened him. Why not? No regrets, with those monsters coming. She deserves this, poor lass.
In the corner, a Dothraki screamer was in the middle of a scuffle with a wildling over a woman. Unsullied moving in to break it up as fists flew.
I don't think she deserves this in particular, but other than that, aye.
Nor the dead.
Probably think they're all doomed.
Inside the keep, the Great Hall managed to have a bit of class. Not that those inside were not irresponsibly drunk. From a peak, he managed to see at least 10 men and 2 women passed out on the floor. A giant wildling with a red beard was belting out free folk ballads with an equally tall female knight. One man, Benjen guessed it was Lord Edric Dane based on the features, cursing as he was bested in an arm wrestling by a gorgeous Dornish lass. The same woman that had travelled with Jon north of the wall. The woman whistled and swayed to the movement of the Dornish fiddlers, demanding another challenger. Behind her, the dance floor was filled with revelry. At the centre, a young woman with the look of a Mormont of Bear Island, dancing a jig was...
Was that Rickon? Fuck, he's grown.
Had Benjen been able to cry, the tears would have been flowing like a waterfall. Hood still up, the guard eased him through the centre of the table. Sure enough, there was the couple. Sansa had grown to be a stunning woman, her mother's confidence and cunning written all over her face, but with a softness Cat had never been able to have. Beside her was Sir Payne, a hopelessly awkward young man. Perfect for Sansa, Benjen noted. On his left was Robb, looking every inch the Northern Lord, while on her left was his Tyrell wife Marjorie. Almost everything Benjen hoped for his family after all the shit they had been put through.
Almost. Lord Stark, he announced under his hood, voice loud. Lady Sansa.
Her brow rising, Sansa stared as her brother stood.
What business do you have here, stranger?
Clearly he was a bit tipsy. Suspicion turned to shock as Benjen lowered his hood. Sansa gasped in shock. Unlike the others, she was as sober as a silent sister. Uncle Benjen! Both rounded the corners of the table to get a closer look, while Rickon gaped as well as the revelry started to die down, recognising the eldest of the Starks back again.
Benjen bowed. Forgive me for the late arrival, my lord and lady.
Merry laughs left the lips of his family as they threw their arms around him. Line break. Movements slow and as silent as a mouse. Crown Prince Rhaegar Targaryen sent a silent prayer to his Aunt Arya.
Besides father, the greatest warrior in the 7 kingdoms.
Carefully, so as not to wake his sister in her bed, he laced the ties on his cuirass. fitted over his garrison. Decorated with the three-headed dragon of House Targaryen, leather pads over his shoulders emblazoned with the Stark direwolf. Armour fit for a prince of both houses. Traditions of King Theon Stark and Aegon Targaryen. Grandmother Catelyn will kill me. 7 hells Arya will kill me. But, as his father taught him, it was his duty to the realm. He was a prince of House Targaryen and Stark, both devoted and stubborn. A quick clip of his sword, the Bast castle-forged steel, a gift for his 8th name day from his uncle Robb until Longclaw would pass to him by right, covered in dragonglass from a quick side trip to the foundries outside of the city walls, found the outfit complete. Everyone would know where he was going at the end of this. But not Biffle, he thought with a smirk. Pushing open the glazed window that decorated the red brick interior of Maegor's Holdfast, Rhaegar tied the rope he had pilfered to his bed frame. Not strong enough to brace an adult knight, but for the 8-year-old crown prince, it would do. Inching out onto the ledge, 1 foot at a time, he leaned over the lip to see the courtyard below. About 20-foot climb, 20 feet, and he'd be home free. You stupid head! Yelping, nearly losing his balance, Rhaegar only just managed to keep from falling by grabbing on the tiny grip on the stone. Panicked eyes glancing to his right, the fully dressed form of his twin sister sat upon the ledge, arms crossed over her riding dress, glaring at him. 7 hells, I nearly fell over, stupid! Don't call me stupid, Lykia. You're the stupid one. Wanting to leave for the north without me? She reached out to hit him, but hesitated. Despite hating him at this moment, he was still her brother. It would be quite hurtful for him to fall to his death. How could you not tell me? I'm the prince, Ari. I have to do what's right. Don't pull that I'm the prince doo-doo with me. Arya's nose crinkled when she seethed, a copy of her mother. And that doesn't include the rider of one of the 3 adult dragons of House Targaryen. Arya shot back. As I said, stupid. Rhaegar clenched his fists, looking a lot like his father at that moment. I'm still not taking you. Arya laughed, a merry laugh that worried her brother. Don't worry about that, Lykia. I left a little something to force your hand. Look turning from confusion to horror, to anger, and finally to a sigh of acceptance. Rhaegar turned his head skyward. Sansenya, come. Triumph on her face, Arya did the same. Edaron, come. Head throbbing, Catelyn pinched the bridge of her nose as she read the dispatches from Winterfell. From Moat Cailin, from everywhere in Westeros, the tendrils of the long night dropping snow or even in dawn. Citizens panicking, boats to the free cities, and even New Valyria packed with fearful small folk. The household guards, practically old men and young boys, all the veterans fighting in the north, barely able to handle the chaos. Tossing aside a dispatch, practically a plea from the aging Lord Hightower of Oldtown, Catelyn picked up another. Handwriting horrible, almost childlike. Can't these damn lords read? The only worst chicken scratch she had seen was from Walder Frey. Practically what would happen to some hill tribesman was made a lord. Unfolding the sheaf of parchment, Catelyn suddenly noticed that it wasn't even a Raven dispatch, but a regular sheaf from any desk in the castle. Grandmother, Papa and Muna need us. Do not worry, we are the blood of the dragon. Love, Princess Arya and Crown Prince Rhaegar. By the end, Catelyn's hands were a ghostly white. No, it can't be. She blinked, rereading the message, hoping against all hope. But it was in Arya's handwriting. This much was true from their lessons with Samwell Tarly and the Maesters. Doors thrown open, revealing the head of the household guard. My lady, the prince and princess, they're not in their rooms. From the courtyard, the twin roars of dragons echoed through the city, a flash of orange and white outside the office window as they ascended to the north. Line break. A quick knock on the door did not disturb Bran. He preferred his solitude to the celebration, but he did not mind the interruption at this point. Yes? He answered, voice not as emotionless as was the norm. The door opened to find Mira. Bran! Oh, for the God's sake, are you still sitting around the fire? Her hands were on her hips. A form-fitting northern wool dress hugged her figure, which, despite the furs or trousers she normally wore, was quite attractive. Bran knew intimately how wonderful her figure was. Not even your sister's wedding would find you out of here.
I gave them my blessing before the wedding. Do you understand how busy I am?
Mira scowled, which Bran found made her face even more attractive. Not that he would say it. Her lover was a less explicit version of Arya. You are the only person who can sit here, do nothing, and still be busy. She sighed, defeated. There's someone asking to see you.
Is it my Uncle Benjen?
Mira blinked, shaking her head with a chuckle. I have to stop letting you surprise me with that. Fool me once, shame on me. He quipped, the smirk so rare on Bran's face, Mira was surprised again.
Tell him to come in, Mira. I do wish to see my uncle.
Just before the door closed, Bran called after her. Oh, and fetch for Lady Melisandre. He was going to need both. Even with the raucous laughter and drunken revelling booming from the great hall, courtyard, and the tents beyond, Bran knew it was all a facade. A mirage born of ale, wine, and plenty of wilful delusion. At least for the night to celebrate the wedding of the Hand. Underneath such mindless revelry, morale had plummeted to the deepest abyss in the days following the disaster at Last Hearth, as most were now calling it. The panic that had seized the Imperial army had petered out, but the fear remained. The resignation remained. Operating on mere inertia, the soldiers and small folk were only confident in their defeat, and in such confidence defeat would most certainly come. Feelings that Bran did not share in the slightest, for he knew the truth. A truth that never ceased to fill him with the hope in his heart and a smile on his face. The most joy one had ever seen in him since his accident. Not that he'd let anyone else know. Since the heart tree in the true north, he and Marden Stark were bonded. The still aching scar on his hand, a brand to the world, sent the king of death's thoughts through his mind whenever he tried to see the army of the dead. To find Daenerys. There was still so much Bran did not know of his powers. Of the Night King's powers. Best not to risk it. To let him believe Jon was truly dead. And walk into the trap. Thrown open, the sound of hard boots shook the floorboards.
So there's where my nephew's been hiding,
Benjen said gruffly. Uncle Benjen. Bran greeted, accepting the hug as cheery as a tone as he could muster. From the smile on Mira's face behind it, it was a pretty good tone. But the smile only brought a cold to him. As his uncle pulled back, Bran eyed him with resignation. The children had to save you, didn't they? If Benjen was surprised Bran knew of his cold hands, he didn't show it.
Seems that the children got to you as well.
He pulled up a stool and sat upon it, ashen grey eyes looking him over.
The three-eyed raven chose you, eh? Not the night ship you wanted, Bran.
Bran offered a small smile. It's fine, I assure you. My gift is rather valuable, and the Warlocks of Qarth trained me to manage their power.
Warlocks of Qarth?
The last remaining child of Rickard Stark furrowed his brows.
You actually went to Essos?
To Meereen, originally. It wasn't safe in Westeros with the Boltons in control at the time. Stayed with Daenerys for a while, and then a voice drew me to Qarth, to the House of the Undying. Closing his eyes, breathing deeply, Bran summoned the mystical energy, bathing him in an ethereal orange-red shroud. Slowly he rose to his feet, taking in Benjen's dropped jaw. Grabbing a decanter of melted snow from the table across from him, he carried it to his wheelchair. The hue disappeared as Bran's once again crippled form slumped into his chair, caused Benjen to shake from his reverie.
7 hells!
That's what I said when I first saw it, Mira stated as she re-entered, the Red Woman in tow. Took away Jojen's illness and brought back Hodar's voice.
Willis is back! Benjen laughed. A laugh of happiness. Miss that big lug. Always did help me around when I broke some limb playing with Ned or Lyanna.
Moment of amusement dying down, he regarded Bran with new eyes.
Never thought one of the children told me would be my own little nephew.
Both young lovers looked up at Benjen with confusion, while Melisandre just stood in the corner, passive expression belaying her observant eyes and ears. What did the children say to you? Sighing, Benjen ran his hands through his hair. Fingertips blackened from frostbite, unable to feel all but the greatest sensation. Much that near death had taken away from him, that his duty had taken from him. all to fulfill the purpose he had been born to fill.
We all know what the Empress is, what she has become thanks to Mardenstog, and what the children turned him into.
The deliverer of all evil, Melisandre spoke for the first time, a soul corrupted by the blackest of all magic, a magic that only the purest of all light can finally vanquish.
But he came back. Soren Targaryen killed him, but he came back due to the dragonglass within him, within Daenerys. Such provides them with not only just their power, but their invulnerability to all but the steel infused with the life force of a dragon, tempered by the heart of an unfrozen.
Jon is dead, though, Mira stated sadly, but her sadness was not reflected on the other three. Isn't he? Bran smiled.
You'll see soon enough, my love.
He turned to his uncle.
Can this dragonglass be removed? I look into the past to try and find the children of the forest, and learn of their secrets, but it's all clouded. Clouded by him.
Removing a dagger of dragonglass, hefting it in his hands, Benjen looked at the hearth.
Brynden Rivers, the last raven. He told me many things. Showed me many things. He had centuries to learn the secrets of even the gods themselves. He scowled. Of why the Night King cannot be killed. Of why Dany will die in this coming battle before even a sword or spear penetrates her.
Mira gasped. How is this possible? Still boring on Bran, Benjen leaned on his hands. A flicker of the eyes took in Melisandre. The priestess took 2 steps closer as a result.
Did you ever hear of the Brotherhood of the Dawn?
Bran raised an eyebrow, but it was Melisandre who answered with a surprise if the ancient name was mentioned. The Ancient Order of Mystic Warriors. Perhaps she needed to find Lord Durrandon for the rest. Fought in the first long night, Bran added. It was said they became the first Red Priests, the first priests of Valyria, and the first warlocks of Karth. Benjen nodded.
Aye, but it isn't their subsequent history that concerns me.
He leaned in.
The Brotherhood also gave the world the first three-eyed raven, and Brynden Rivers told me everything about him.
Brum listened, riveted to Benjen's tale, half in horror, half in resignation, with just a sliver of hope remaining at the end. Odds long, but hope existent nonetheless. Flashback. A vast white plain. In all directions, vision obscured by the swirling ice and snow. Bran did not know what was to come, why his powers brought him here. But such only lasted for a moment. The pain burning within the mark on his forearm told him all he needed to know. Out in the distance came one figure. A dead wildling, face half rotted away, the blue eyes as the only sign of sentience within. Behind was another, clad in Lannister armour, and another, in the leathers of the Unsullied. Then more, and more. More than Bran could count. Thousands, tens of thousands, that just started to pass him. Trudging around him, through him. Men of all kinds. Monstrous ice spiders. Rotted animals. Direwolves made vastly more fearsome with glowing blue eyes. Ground shaking beneath him as a giant plodded through the snowdrifts. Not a sound passing from the beast. And, in the middle of it all, atop a black steed, whose face had been cut away to the bone, was a woman. Skin blue as ice, hair a silver white blowing in the vast gales. Features still beautiful, though hauntingly so. Bran stared into the face of Daenerys Targaryen. Her new face. New form. At the van of her army. Nothing but malevolence in her cold blue eyes. His arm was soon engulfed in an icy inferno as a great black dragon passed overhead. Bran! Benjen shook his nephew, the lad's shrieks echoing throughout the room. Bran! As Bran woke, Robb burst into the room, sword drawn. What happened? Marjorie peeking through the doorway behind him, both retiring to their chambers when the screaming was heard. Looking down, seeing his younger brother awake from a vision, his muscles relaxed, but the tension remained.
"What did you say, Bran?"
"Nothing good, I am afraid," Alessandra answered, resignation on her face. Easing herself into her husband's side, Marjorie felt the chill course through her flesh. "Just tell us, Bran." Breathing, hand over his heart, Bran closed his eyes, opening them after a moment, expression as flat as ever. They march for Winterfell. We have a day. At most. Line break. The storm was a godsend for the beauty of Last Hearth. White precipitation masking the scars of the first battle between the combined forces of the living and the dead south of the true north since the Age of Heroes. Since the age of the first Starks and Targaryens. Not healing the scars, but masking them, banishing them from recent memory. Perhaps the future residents of the Umberlord lands could clean it up without the memory of the ghosts and demons that would haunt the minds of those that had fought here.
Perhaps that is all bullshit.
Staggering in the snow, harsh winds nearly toppling him, Jon revelled in it, untouched by it, as he was with fire. Ice and fire. Unburnt and unfrozen. The irony never ceased to hit him. Here he was, Jon Snow, bastard of Winterfell. Turned out to not only be a Targaryen prince, but the prince that was promised according to all religious faiths existing. Saviour from the maiden's womb, stallion that mounts the world, the Lord of Light, the one who brings the dawn. All on his shoulders. And only on his shoulders. With Daenerys' death, there was no one else who Jon could face in the coming fight alongside. And it terrified him. By his side, Ghost looked up, Ton lolling. Jon smiled, ruffling his hand through the direwolf's fur.
At least I still have you, boy.
A reminder of the man he had been. Of a man not a prince, not a bastard. The man beneath it all, the one Daenerys fell in love with. Searching for Rhaegal, calling out for the dragon, a sound behind him drew his immediate attention. Both widened and softened.
Bran?
"Hello, Jon," the standing figure said, voice monotone aside from the slight grief tinging it.
"I knew you were alive. I could feel the moment you emerged from the afterlife. Based on what I have seen, the children probably felt it too. And Daenerys." Her name only brought tears back to his face. "I don't know if I can do it. End her life." "You cannot, Jon. Leave her to me." Skeptical eyes watched his brother. "I cannot explain further, but Benjen is here. He and I have a plan, and you need to focus on the Night King, for he marches on Winterfell." Eyes closing, fists clenching until the nails started to cut into his skin, Jon finally looked up, only to see Bran gone, leaving him to his anger, his rage, a madness that threatened to consume him until he brought fire and blood to the entire army of the dead. A rage only building as Rhaegal landed in the snow, sharing in the dragon's amber eyes. Walking up to him, Jon rested his palm on Rhaegal's snout, letting the madness course into his green dragon before it overwhelmed them both. "Ready to avenge, mother?"
Only a growl responded.
"Good."
End of chapter. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that. Oh boy, okay. This is interesting. Oh, come on. I'm trying to remember what happens in the next chapter, but nothing. So, yeah, anyway, you guys know the drill. Like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell, blah, blah, blah. Bye, my guys, gals, and non-binary pals. I'll see you in another video. See ya!